Okay, let's begin. We are up to the Nun Hey Amid Aleph on the very top of the page, and we're continuing to learn that theme. When you say a word, what does the word actually mean? Says the Mishnah, Hanoidim min hadogan. If you say dogan, dogan we normally translate as grains. Dogan means actually piled up, and grains, that's how they, after they harvest the crop, they pile them up. So that's what dogan is. In fact, one of the reasons why you cannot eat corn on Pesach is because it's called corn, and that's dogan. Just the name. It's not kidneys or anything else. It's corn. It's the name. So Hanadim Dogan. If somebody says dogan, what does that mean? Says the mayor also is also forbidden the pul hamitzri. We're on the top of the page on Hayam and Aleph. If somebody says I will not eat dogan, dogan normally we translate as the 5 grains, wheat and barley and spelt and all that, and oats and rye. But if somebody says dogan, he's also forbidden pul hamitzri. Why? Because the origin of the word dogan is literally piling up, and pul hamitzri, the Egyptian bean, also while it's dry, that's how they pile it up as well. Therefore, it's included. And the Chacham say no. No, people when they say dogan, it means the 5 grains, and does not mean this. It does not include anything that's piled up. Rab Meir says hanoidim min hatvua. Rab Meir says I'll agree that if you use the word tvua, I'll agree with the Chacham. The word tvua definitely means only the 5 kinds of grains. It doesn't mean anything else. But where I disagree is if you made a neder from the dogon, I hold dogon, you go back to the origin of that word, which means piling up. Asr bako is asr anything that piles up, including this Egyptian bean. But a mutter bepedus ilan uviyedek, but definitely fruits of a tree which you don't just pile up, or yedek and green vegetables is not an issue. Says the Gemara, remember, so what do we see from here? According to Rameh, the dogon, what does dogon mean? Kol midday the midgit. Anything, or call the midgan, anything that you pile up, mashma. So Masiv Rabbi Yeshua, this is the question. In the time of Chizkiah HaMelech, people were very lax in giving meiser and all that. So he came out and made a decree that everyone should give meiser from everything that they have, and the people were very enthusiastic. And it says, "Go pray tzadaber." And when there was a pitch over there in the matter, there was a breach. Here, Bubnei Yisrael, the Jews then they definitely increased. Reishis Dagon, they gave the first of their Dagon, Tiraj v'Yitza, their wine, the oil. And then it said the whole tuas hasadl, all the two in the field. Now, if you're telling me that dogon includes already anything that's piled up, so tuah is already included in dogon. Why does the pasuk spell out tuah hasadl? The amri dogon called the Megillah Mashma. If you can follow it, it said that dogon includes anything which is piled up. Mike Kiprotza Davi Hirbun, and 3 for the second part of the pasuk. So what do you mean the whole tuah hasadl? What are you adding that you already didn't have? I'm going to buy you to add things which in the Mishnah itself, Meir said, are not piled up. For example, Pedus Ilum V'Yedek. You don't have to give Meiser from that, but they gave Meiser from the fruits of a tree and thing which are in the Rabbanon, and they gave Meiser plenty of that. That's what the pasuk means to add when it says Chol Tvua Sada. Dogon and covers according to Meir anything that piles up, not just the 5 grains, other things as well. For example, Egyptian bean, but fruits of a tree which Meir concedes you don't pile up. But then the Eden went out of their way to give whatever they can, including Maisa from fruits. Rameir's din is on, yes. When it comes to Maisa, he agrees. Everyone agrees. It's only the Chamesh Minute Dog. Only the 5 kinds. Rameir says, "Hanoidim and Atua." Rabbi Yechon says, "How come there's no argument about noidim and Atua? There's no dispute if someone makes a neder from Tua, Shein also Chamesh Minute. That for sure. Your only also is the 5." Is kinds of grains. Tanya Namehoch, we actually learned Vishavi, they all agree, but no, you're not Tvua, Shane also, hey, meaning everyone agrees that the word Tvua means the 5 grains. Isn't that obvious? Why should Tvua be anything else but that? No, Mouth, I would have thought Tvua called Milamashma. I would have thought Tvua is a very generic name, anything that grows from the ground is called Tvua. Kamashwan, the loy mashma called the comes to teach, it does not mean everything, it does not include everything, only the 5 grains. And why would you think that tvua includes everything? Because the targum for the word tvua is alalta, and alalta basically means anything which is beneficial. So we would have thought it's such a generic word term like alalta, then tvua says anything that anything that grew out of the ground, anything. So Gemara, Moshe Rabbi Yosef says question. So in that pasuk, we see that that it seems from there that it goes beyond the 5 grains. It says in the pasuk, "Kol Tvua Sada." Because clearly, Kol Tvua. We see that Tvua includes not just the 5 grains. According to Baya, the Paydas, it includes so many other things. Amarava Tvua l'chud Tvua Sada l'chud. You're mixing up. There's Tvua when it's solo and when it's a Sada. When Tvua is joined together with Sada, it means anything that's out in the field, anything that comes from the field. You're right. It's very expansive. But when Tvua is on its own, it means the 5 minimum. And our Mishnah, you see the Meir Chacham, they all agree. There's a Gemara, Bar Mar Shmuel. Shmuel had a son called Bar. Shmuel's student was Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda's student was Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi learned by Rabbi Yosef, and you learn by others as well. They learned by Rabbi Yosef, and it must have been an old man Bar, and Bar decided to leave Rabbi, to leave part of his tzava for Rabbi, and this is what he said: Bar Mashmul, pocket. The less than Tleisa, they should give Tleisa Alfe Zuzay 13,000 Zuz Lerova, but not cash. Min Alauta than Harpanya. But a place called Harpanya, Ma'alauta. Use the word Alauta. Alauta means anything which is an improvement, anything which is getting better all the time. So Shulchan of the Kamerabes Alauta, what assets can I seize, can I take? Because they're referred to as Alauta. Rabbi Yosef Mastisni. It's a Fesha Mishnah. It says V'shavin ben noidim at shein asur elam chamesh laminim. That it's only asur chamesh laminim. That all you collect is from the 5 minutes, because the word alauta is a translation of the word tvua. Tvua is the 5 minutes. Amal Abaya said Abaya mixed in. He said me dummy. Tvua le mashma chamesh laminim. The word tvua, you're right, only means 5 minutes. But alauta, even though we translate tvua as alauta is beneficial, but alauta is not limited to the 5 grains. Call me le mashma. Alauta can mean anything which improves and gives you benefit, even other fruits. And Bar Mar Shmuel says that Rabbi can collect from. Then they reported to Rabbi Yosef said they did not report to Rabbi said, but reported to Rabbi said, I'm sorry, my Rebbe was wrong. I never asked the question. I know Alalta means everything, like Rabbi said. Listen to my question. Alalta means something which is constantly improving. What about the rent? Am I entitled to collect the rent from houses and boats? And why is that? So obviously, Bar Shmuel was a very rich man. He owned houses, he owned ships. And what's the shaila here? The shaila is mine. Me amrin and kim the pachsan. Anything goes that has wear and tear, so it's devalued. He's lavalalti. We're not talking about the land itself, but we're talking about the improvements on the land. Wear and tear over time, and therefore it depreciates. Perhaps given the since you don't see the deterioration, you can't really see it. The government nominated this is how much you can claim for depreciation every year. You don't have to measure it, because how do you measure it? But that's how it is allowed to heat. So therefore, but you're getting rent. So the rent, the positive you see the improvement. This house generates all this rent. This ship generates all this rent. And the deterioration of it, the depreciation of it, you don't really see. It's not visible. It's very slow over time, either because it's not visible or other because it's very slow. And you wouldn't even notice it. You don't notice it at all. If you go away for a year, you come back, you'll notice it's a little bit of wear and tear. So maybe that's still called a That's my question. This is what the Rabbi said. So why did he ask that? He asked me a question like he tricked me, and I had an answer which is a my shalachlon. What did he send me for a question that he never was interested in? Plus, I got it wrong. Rabbi Yosef in Arab Psachim says that 3 worst qualities of a person is one of them is to be a captain, to have a bad temper, and then being stingy, and then being fastidious, being OCD. And he says we're cool and be. See right here. He got angry why Rabbi asked the question. I didn't delineate or explain this question properly. He found the gabbai of Rabbi Yosef that was pouring wine. Let me pour him and mix. And those wine is very strong. They used to dilute it in water. But the Rabbi throughout Shas says that the correct way of diluting it is a ratio of 1 to 3. Let me be, he said to the waiter, let me stand there and let me mix the wine, dilute the wine for Rabbi Yosef. And he diluted it. And when Rabbi Yosef was drinking, he made a comment. Rabbi Yosef was blind; she couldn't see Rava doing it. Hadin Mizga, Dami Mizga, Rava. But this is similar to the dilution of Rava, either because Rabbi stood for him in the past when he was there living there, or because he knew that Rava's ratio 1-3. Most people did 1-2, he did 1-3. Here's one of the few Gemaras we know Rava's pedigree or genealogy. That the Rava was the son of Rabbi Yosef of the son of Chama, because they have a debate who Rava was. Amalei, who knew? Yes, that is him. That's Rava. Amalei, don't sit on your knees. Ad Amalei Perusha Hadim Mills. I want you to explain to me. Rabbi Yosef wanted in a very nice way to tell Rava, you have to be a bit more humble, and don't be smart aleck and ask me questions that you never meant to ask in the first place, and then you say that I was wrong. You should be a bit more humble. So this is how he hinted him. Tell me, that the well was wandering around, and he said, went from Midbar, it went to a place called Matana, from Matana it went to Nachliel, from Nachliel it went to Bamas. Where are these places? Why are they being highlighted? So Rabbi answered. When he was answering, he was listening to what he was saying. He realized what Rabbi Yosef was trying to tell him. Amalei, Kima Sha'oisha Adam's asked like a midbar. You behave like a midbar. What's like a midbar? She'll move to that what do you move to that is, as the Rishonim say, that you are prepared to teach Torah to anybody. You're not judicious. You say, I only learn Torah to this kind of person. You teach Torah to anybody who wants to learn. Then Torah Nidla Matana. The next step is from from Midbar. The next step is Matana. The Eibush will grant you the Torah as a Matana. Remember it says, Midbar Natana. Like the Tzemach Tzaddik says that if you learn Torah with other people, you're Nasa Moichei Pezacha Elepam Kach. They suddenly become 1,000 times wiser. So this is what it means. The Eibush gives us a Matana. I mean, something on our own we would never reach. The Kibush Nidla Matana, once you receive it as a Matana, Nachlu Kael, then the Eibush gives inherits as well. So it says the Matana Nachlu. So the Torah to us is a gift. The Torah to us is a Yerusha. And in other places it says Torah is us a purchase. The Chizra explains why you need 3 different kinds of relationships with the Torah. The Kibush Nachlu Kael, and once the Eibush gave it to you, a Legdula, and you've risen in the ranks. It says Nachlu Bamais is elevated. But then what happens? You start being a bit haughty, filled with hubris because I'm chacham. Everybody worship me. I'm chacham. The Eibush is going to lower you. It says from the place of Bamas, the next place is Hagai, which is a valley. From the top of from a hill, you go to a valley. They sink you in the ground, or they beat you into the ground. So it says V'nishka, we read as if it says V'nishka. You will sink in the ground, on the flatlands. But you can always do tshuva. And if you become more humble, the Eibush will lift you. Because it says in the pasuk that Kol Gi Yunasei. It says that Kol Gi, anybody who is in the valley, Nasi be lifted. So Rava got the message. Time we learned in the Braisa. So Rava's question has not been resolved about the rent and so on. So we say that Yad Bal Shach, he wants to get the rent for himself. Rava has to prove that that's what his intent was from Bar Mashmo. Tanya, but by Nedarim, where Machmed, that includes that as well. If you would ask it, that's all be included. Because we don't know. So you're always Machmed. Tanya learned. I know you've been a Dogan. If somebody makes it from Dogan, also you're forbidden Abba Pula Mitzri, Yavish dry Pula Mitzri, because it piles up, and this is Ameir. The Rabban obviously disagree because they say Dogan means the 5 grains. Permitted, but moist ones, because moist you don't pile up. Permitted with rice. We know there's a machlek in more brachas, but a machlek is Rashi in places where the oides is rice. Rashi says oides means millet, and that's why we're you take a piece of wheat and divide it into 2, betargis into 3, betis into 4. They're all included. Rice itself, Rabbi Yechon, we had more psachir. Rabbi Yechon really holds that rice is considered one of the dogon. That's why you could use it for matzah, but we don't hold that. If somebody makes another from the general fruits of the year, also the choped is forbidden all the fruits of the year. But he's permitted. If you say I don't have any enough from fruits of the year, he's permitted begedim go to claim and sheep of a chol of milk of bain, eggs of glazes and birds and poultry. The imam geduli shonelai, anything that grew this year, these things grow also, animals grow also. Then also bekulam, everything's forbidden. And the Ran says that this neder can only be valid if you did it a short term, or not more than a year, because otherwise we had it before. If you make a neder which is possible to keep, we already give you malchus straight away. Like a person makes sure he won't sleep for 3 days, we give him malchus straight away because it's a shur shav. Right? During the same thing. I know you've been paid as other. If you say I won't have any benefit from fruits of the land, also the whole paid any growth of the land is forbidden. But a mutabik made a pity, permitted with truffles and mushrooms. But the imam, if you say gedule karkala, which grows from the ground, also be cool. And even mushrooms also, they grow on box or tree, on branch, on the ground, so they grow from there as well. But I mean, what do you mean they grow from the ground? But I mean, we learned that dovish and gedu, something that does not grow from the ground. Body. And with Tanya, we gave examples. What we make a shahako, ala melech salt, you make a shahako. It's mined. Ala zamis on salt water. Ala kmein pitris. And on mushrooms and truffle and mushrooms, you make a shahako because they don't grow from the ground. You just say gedulim in earth. Only meshachal in body. Omar Abai, he said, they grow. The fact is that they're attached to a tree trunk, or they're on the ground. Or the main, where do they get the nourishment from? Ma'avidion, it's a fungus. They get the nourishment from the air. It says, it says, when you make a shakal, things that do not grow from the ground, but you're saying they grow from the ground, they just don't get the nourishment from the ground. You're right. Tni, amended, something does not get its nourishment from the ground. Now, Kamein and Pitris, we translate mushroom and truffles, which is what we always translate. If you look in the Aruch, it says there that Pitris, I think what Pitris, he says is tartoffel. Now, we know today tartoffel means truffles. But there were a number of poskim, some Sefer, Mos Nadler, and others who decided tartoffel means kartoffel, which is potatoes. So they paskin halacha l'mai said that on potatoes you make a shahakal. And that's why they wouldn't use it for karpas, because they said you make a shahakal, not a doma. Interesting, because potatoes is a South American vegetable, came from Brazil, and only in the 1600s when they were exploring the southern, the New World. So how in the world would the Aruch live 1,000 years ago have Kamein pictures tartoffel, or even if the Gemara, how did they have it? But interesting, there were poskim will hold, and I think that poskim still follow today some say that you make a shahakal on potatoes.
How do you know it's referring to truffle?
Because we know that Matthias it couldn't have been. And German, I don't know German well, but it's like tartoffel is truffles. Truffle is a kind of mushroom, really. It's the mushroom family. Okay, Mishnah. I know even if somebody makes a neder, now we're talking about clothing. If somebody makes a neder from clothing that you wear, you allowed to wear a sock made out of leather or something from goose hair, ubiria, and some kind of a sheet, ubichamila, some other kind of heavy. These are heavy materials that don't form according to your body, and even if you wear it, it's not really considered clothing. I put a Easter like a carbon for wool that would go on me. Says you're allowed to cover the gizetemer. Wool is proper wool, but gizetemer, strips of wool, it's not really clothing. If you say a pishtan oil like kind of a pishtan oil like pishtan flax should go on me, if you're going to have pieces of pishtan of flax that hasn't been combed yet, so it's really rough, that's not called clothes. Rabbi Yehuda says that is not really on. Sometimes we make a neder, just listen to the words, look at the circumstances, what motivated, what triggered this neder. Let's, for example, there's a difference between wearing clothing or carrying. So look at the situation. Now, in our Mishnah, it only highlights one particular case. If you were carrying these materials, they see it, and you were perspiring, and the stench was terrible, was repugnant. Then he said, I don't want to ever have anything to do with pishtim. But you see what he's talking about. He wasn't talking about clothing. He was talking about as a package, as a carrying, as a burden. The mutali is kasi. You're allowed to wear it as clothing, but also but you just can't wear it as a package. Look at the circumstances. So when does he say this thing? He looked at the circumstances in a case where he was he was carrying it in the bag. Or about the other way around? If he said it, no circumstances. Sorry. Exactly. But whatever he said, there was no circumstances that we can see. He said, I'll lie. What happens then? From the Mishnah, it seems that it will cover everything. It's like carrying side pickles. It makes no difference. It's only in this case. Why I'm saying that is, we'll see in a minute, according to the Rounds version, at least. Not we're going to share agree. Tanya, I know you've been like, so if somebody makes a neder from clothing, you're not to wear a sack, leather, yuria, made a goose, or you another, kind of a sheet, or chamila is other kind of some other kind of dress from that material. But also, but what you're forbidden is to wear like a gartel, to wear like a money belt, with a sayo, so they have like a big sash. They used to wear a leather belt, and they used to carry things in there. Or the sakruta, or naskruta. The Gemara will say that is a minute. Some other kind of garment made out of leather. The anpalia is some kind of a shoe. Sometimes called a sock, sometimes called a shoe. Upolinia, which is like a apron, Simon trousers, a coat and a hat. My is kurti, what's his kurti? Because that's clothing and that's forbidden already. What's his kurti? Even though made out of leather. Or it's some kind of a garment made out of leather. Tanya, they're all forbidden because they're garments. They're not just heavy that you can wear around you. You're not wearing it properly. No, these are regular garments. Tanya learned, even though they're made out of leather. Yoitzim b'sak over on Shabbos, you're allowed to walk around with a heavy sack. Ubesagos of the as long as you're wearing them as clothes, you're allowed to wear the things. You're allowed to wear if it protects you from the rain because it's clothing. A little big table, don't wear a box. You put a box on your head. You say, oh, I'm wearing it as clothing. Another kind of a box, or a mat next to you can't put them on your head and say, I'm doing it. It's not because it's not clothing. But if you're a shepherd, they can go out with these sacks of leather. But not only a shepherd, every single person on Shabbos can wear them. No, the laws of Shabbos are very different than the laws of a neder. The laws of Shabbos is anything that covers you and protects you is considered clothing. And neder is what people normally call clothing. And heavy duty or very heavy, thick leather that's not really pliable or malleable is not really considered any clothes. The Tanya on the Braise, the lineage with further case. What's example? Situation. He was wearing the hut said bothered him. He was wearing wool and it bothered him. Itchy, whatever. I don't want to wear any leather, any wool. Osir lilbaish. You're not allowed to wear umuta litan. You're not allowed to wear it, but umuta litan. I was told that clothes, Hashemensha clothing code 28. I got a few minutes. Also, Lilbaish, you're not allowed to wear. Okay, mutlita, because the trigger was a levisha. We say that you're not allowed to wear it, but you're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to carry it as a package because didn't bother you. It's only wearing it. Oh, your Tom Pisha was wearing flax. The Yizia and he sweated. I said, I'm not going to have anything to do with Pishta anymore. Again, you look at the situation. You're allowed to wear it as clothing, but bothered it was a package. Says the Mishnah. We go a little bit further. Somebody says, I don't have any hana from a house. Upstairs is not considered the house. The house, the main floor is the ground floor. Upstairs already is a tircha. You got to climb up. It's secondary to a house. And Chacham say a house is a house. Aliyah b'chal abayis. House upstairs, downstairs, all part of the same house. But everyone agrees, if you made a net that I don't want to have anything to do with the upstairs, you're allowed to live downstairs. Man Tana, who says the bayis that house, the rabbi says Hayetzia comes to include, this is one version, the answers others have a different version. That how do you know? What are we talking about? We're talking about over here is when it comes to leprosy in the house, then we say you have to destroy the house and else. What about a room? It's called Yitzia. Yitzia is the room with like a little warehouse inside the house. The Ran says others say that definitely it's part of the house. Yitzia means tzavua. It's a colored house. By clothing, we know that only white clothing attracts leprosy, but not colored. How do I know that by a house if we have a room that's colored, pink, blue? I know also that Rabbi says hatzavua. I know that it's included in it says the base. Also, it says the base. It says in the pasuk of the base eretz achuzas. The base comes to include even parts of the house which are not normally considered your house, like this tzavua room where you'd see it. The base also teaches you aliyah. Also come to teach you the upstairs. No, but a house does not mean upstairs because it says big base, it includes the upstairs. Obviously, a maid must be a maid. A maid holds that upstairs is not included. What do I need a possible base to include the upstairs? Every time upstairs is included. I feel timid abundant. Rabbi said, even when I said abundant, we still need a pasuk. I would have thought because the pasuk says the base eretz achuzaschem, a house that's attached to the ground. I would have thought in this case it means on the ground level, because it says eretz. The mechaber may base aliyah halim mechaber. Only that's what attaching ground is for the base. Upstairs is not attaching ground. So therefore, I need a pasuk. Who does it go? Bias. If I say bias bebasi and a house amongst houses, I'm selling you. The mareu aliyah. Then he can even show him the upstairs. No, it's only because you added bias bebasi. If I would have said bias, it wouldn't be the upstairs. like Rameir. Time of Damle Bayish of Basin, only because he added like Bayit to Basin. There's a house in my house. I mean, even the upstairs. I will buy a stamp a house. Ain't about early. Does not show the upstairs. Later Rameir, that follows a mayor who says that a house does not include the upstairs. I feel to Rabbanan. My aliyah, you know what he meant by aliyah? Me'ulish of a bucket. Aliyah means Bayi is the basi, the best of my houses. What do you call it? But if the guy wants the upstairs, he can have the upstairs. Aliyah doesn't mean over here upstairs. Aliyah means the best of the houses. That's what Bandi base means. And if I don't do with the Rabbanu Rameir, it means you have to give him the best. If you would just stop and say Bayi is, the guy can give any house, even the poorest condition, the house in the poorest conditions. Because it said Bayi the base, he has to give him Aliyah means the best house in the thing. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow.